Arcane Anthems here, also known as Weston, who is a TTRPG musician and actor, which I think is fucking cool. And I cannot wait to talk to you and talk about all the things. How have you been?
I have been very, a lot has been going on in my life right now. We're like building a fence in the backyard, so I have
Hmm.
family in town.
Oh,
There was
wow.
like all this school stuff happening with my kids, so like I was helping them with all this standardized testing stuff that
Oh,
was going on.
God.
So there's been a lot of like real life things
Right,
happening
right.
amidst all like content creation and music creation and prepping for Gen Con and
Yes.
amongst a billion other things.
Right,
So
right.
it's been a lot. It's been a whole heck of a lot, but we're getting through. We're making it happen.
Hmm.
Just like the stream, in the end, it's gonna be fine and it's gonna be fun and we do it because it's fantastic.
Exactly. It's going to be totally fine. This is fine. This is totally fine. Totally professional. So, the name Arcane Anthems, everyone knows. Thank you so much, by the way, Miss, for doing that, because I totally forgot. Um, the name Arcane Anthems, how did you come up with it? Where did it come from? What was the inspiration?
Good name, or good question. It is a good name. I like it a lot. I actually started my content creation journey in 2016,
Hmm.
and I started with the name Make My Anthem.
Oh, nice.
And so I was creating songs from about 2016 to 2019, 2020 for
Hmm.
people's like characters,
Okay.
which was great. But the thing about that is I didn't like the name so much. I think I liked the word anthem, but I wanted some kind
Hmm.
of alliteration that
Right.
also tied into this like fantasy-esque environment. So I was like workshopping names for no joke, like 9 months.
Wow.
Uh,
Oh, my God.
before I came up with this one. So I am a hella proud of Arcane Anthems. I think it rolls off the tongue nicely.
It does.
And it has served me well. I grew up in like I was in rock bands for like 10 years.
Oh,
So
wow.
this
Okay.
idea of like having a band name that was
Hmm.
just me was very fun, as opposed to just being like, oh, Weston writes all these songs. Like I think Arcane Anthems writing songs sounds pretty cool.
Right.
So I was really happy when I came up with the name, and I
Hmm.
thought it fits well. Um, and yeah, so that's kind of how I fell into the name. Just lots of incorrect options until I was like, that's the one. Like it just like sparked in my brain. I'm sure we've all had situations like that,
Oh, I've
but
had.
that's where
Yeah.
name came from.
I mean, that's awesome. Like, I've had situations like that. As some of the people in my chat know, I was Classic Sam. Then I was Classic Sam GM. And then one day, um, while setting up to deciding that I was going to stream, that I was going to do a bunch of stuff, and I was going to stream, I was going to change the name to Classic Sam NYGM, and somehow it changed to New York GM. And I was like, the Sam was gone, and everyone's like, "Who are you?" It was great. So for 30 days, you couldn't change it back for, I think it's 30 or 60 days. For 30 or 60 days, I got trolled by every single person that followed me and who I followed. It was great. But the music connection, 60 days. Thank you, Thank you, Myth. So the music connection with TTRPG, that is so unique. It's something that most people don't gravitate. Like, people, when they look for music for TTRPGs, it's not to create the music. It's usually just like, I'll just get your basic tavern sound, or whatever sound that fits my game, and do it. How did you come up to make music, unique music for TTRPG?
Um, I think honestly, I spent the first like 4 years trying to convince people to like use music in their games
Oh,
and to
really?
get songs done for their characters in the same way that they used art, or they use maps, or they use they get certain sets of dice for their
Right.
characters.
Mhm.
I was kind of opening people's eyes to how cool it would be if their character had a theme and a song. So like that was a lot of work and a lot of effort that I put in, because people didn't really get it. They're like, why would I want this?
Right.
And it really takes going through the process of commissioning a song and adding music in your games for you to start realizing like, oh, there is value here.
Right.
And my goal with Arcane Anthem specifically was to elevate people's games in a way, specifically streamed games, obviously home games, but
Mhm.
specifically streamed games where they wouldn't have to worry about like the licensing side of things so much.
Right.
They could just like use the music.
Okay.
and focus on the creation process and not like all the legality and the licensing and the royalties. And like I didn't want people who were kind of getting started streaming in their games to have to worry about that stuff. I really just wanted them to focus on playing a really good game and creating and curating a really great environment for their audience and for their players. So that's where the idea for Arcane Anthems came from. But like I said, like I had been an artist, I've been a musician for about 10 years in rock bands before then, and I actually fell out of love with music.
Really? Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
I became very jaded
Okay.
by the kind of music industry, and when I got into music, I didn't feel like I had very many or any mentors or any connections or anything like that. I was um I was really lost when it came to those things, and I felt like I was just like making it up,
Oh wow.
and
Okay.
it wasn't going well. You know, like I felt like we were putting all this time and energy and blood and sacrifice into the music we were making, and it didn't matter because nobody would hear it. And the only way to make people hear it was to get somebody who was already in the know,
Yeah.
um, you know, and from what I could tell, you just had to pay them tens of thousands of dollars
Yeah.
to, to to make things happen for you. And I was like, you know what, that doesn't seem right.
Yeah.
So luckily, like I fell out of the music band scene, and I fell into board gaming.
Oh.
Uh,
Okay. That's
with
weirdly.
a yeah, it was well a friend of mine who played keys for me, keys and bass in some of these bands, just kind of fell into board gaming and started having all these board game nights and started doing all this stuff. So he invited me to come over, and then we started playing board games together with a group, and then I found and I don't want to jump into any for future questions, but like from there we started transitioning over to, or I had to convince the entire group to play D&D first
Oh.
off.
Okay.
Uh,
It's usually one. It's
'Cause they were
always.
like-
It's usually one person. It's like, come on, please play with me.
when I brought it up, they were like, "Wow, Weston, that's really nerdy." And I'm like, "Listen, y'all are just playing board games. Like, what do you mean? Like, y'all are already." And we were playing games like Pandemic and
Okay.
like great board games. The Dead of Winter. I mean, we are in a board game renaissance. There are so
Okay.
many brilliant, cool board games out there.
Right.
But yeah, so it was from there that we got into Dungeons and Dragons specifically, and I've played all sorts of different TTRPGs now. But from there we played D&D, and I actually reconnected back with the music later on,
Okay.
after a death of a character, and I stayed up till about 2 a.m. kind of writing those emotions
Okay.
about that character, because I jumped in. That was my first time ever DMing anything.
Oh wow. Okay. Okay.
And so I just jumped straight into the DM role, into a homebrew world that I was making, and just kind of did my best.
Awesome.
And so a first character death to a DM or GM is not something that you'll ever forget. And so I had to kind of process those things in a way that made sense to me, and I process a lot of my emotions through music.
Oh.
And then I thought, well, maybe other people would want songs about their characters. And so that's kind of how my whole journey started.
Okay. So when you kind of like fell out of love with music, and TTRPGs brought you back, where did the idea come from to make this, I guess, a career? Like, this is a very unique thing. This is something that people wouldn't say necessarily that you can do as as a viable option. Like, where did that portion of the whole thing come from?
Well, I was already a career musician. Like that idea of, staying on the struggle bus and making music for a living. It's not a great living. But it's money wise, but it's so fulfilling. And it connects with people in a way that only, art can.
Yeah, right.
And I've been very fortunate to have kind of gone through several different iterations of who I am as an artist. Initially starting with just commissions,
Okay.
and then moving into making more broad strokes music, being supported on Patreon, doing diving heavy into the social media side of things, kind of becoming a quote unquote influencer, doing brand deals, um, Twitch streaming, live streaming, music creation on Twitch, and having all sorts of different revenue streams is how creators survive.
Right.
It's never just a single thing
Right.
that is going to support your career. You have to rely on a lot of different things, kind of all at the same time. And yeah, so for me, music was already my path.
Right.
Was already what I feel the universe kind of put me here to do.
Okay.
And my good friend Will Savino, who does tons of really amazing TTRPG music already, he runs a great Patreon called Burrowbound.
Okay.
They do all maps and characters and music and all sorts of stuff. He said that we don't choose to be musicians. It's like the universe chooses us to be musicians, and we are compelled to write music.
Right.
And that's not something, and not doing so brings us misery.
Yeah, yeah. Not doing your passion will bring you misery.
The choice, for better or for worse, is taken from us, right?
Right.
And the sooner we accept that, then the less pressure we put on ourselves to have said, oh, maybe I should have done something different. Anyway, I hope that's an answer to the question.
That's totally
I'm a little long-winded. Stop me whenever.
I will not stop you. So just so you're well aware, I like talking to people. I like talking to interesting people. And if you're going to talk, I'm going to let you, and I'm going to listen because I love listening. So you also, on TikTok, you are huge. I watch you primarily on TikTok. I know you're here on Twitch. I know I've seen your stuff on YouTube. But on TikTok, you have some of the funniest, videos that I've seen in a while, especially in TTRPG and D&D, and I just kind of watch them over and over again. Quiet. How did the acting portion come along? Music is your passion, obviously, but how did the acting part of this whole thing become a thing for you on TikTok?
I think I've always loved being on stage as an entertainer. I think that the acting stuff is because I love embodying a character. I love performing and entertainment, and those things give me strength. They give me a reason, in the same way that as a musician, I'm constantly trying to help people understand who Weston is through my music. I think acting does the same thing, right? There are elements of every character that we play that is true to us. And because we're good at finding that truth, we can show others those true things about us. And one thing that I've learned in both music and acting is that being vulnerable is a strength and is something that is so important to make art feel authentic, or to be funny and goofy, because I am a funny, goofy person. And when I stopped trying to be so cool all the time, I found actual happiness and actual joy. Was when I embraced that, listen, I'm a goofy guy, and I have a lot of goofy in me, and I need to stop trying to be something that I'm not. And when I started doing that, my music took off. I had way more opportunities to perform. And people started to enjoy my performances more because I was willing to provide something that was real to me. And I think people can sense that. So I did drama in high school. I did plays. I was in show choir in high school. And I've since gone back and done parts in shows, and so acting has always been a part of me. I did commercial acting for a little while. I've always been super interested in voice acting and all sorts of things. So again, that all comes from me just loving to embody a character, loving to play with my voice, see where it can take me. I do the same thing in music, right? As a singer, I'm constantly trying to reinterpret like who I want to be as a singer. And I have like a natural singing voice that I've kind of figured out the way that I want to sing.
Hmm.
But then saying like, but what if I sang a little differently? What if I sang more like the person that I'm parodying, right?
Ooh, okay.
So I've done quite a bit of that
Okay.
to, and it served me. It served me well. So
So
yeah, I hope that answers the question.
that does, and I'm kind of wondering what is the biggest difference between um, your old genre of rock music and what you're doing now? They're two completely different things. Still music, it's still music, but there's obviously a big difference. What is that difference, and how do you cope with the differences between the two? And do you still go back to your old singing, your old rock band stuff?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think the biggest difference is where the inspiration comes from. Because all the skills that I learned musically and melodically and all those things that I learned just writing standard pop songs
Hmm.
are all applicable
Right.
to my current job. But I think where the inspiration comes from is so much more community minded. And as a musician writing more standard pop music, you're trying to connect with people's like everyday life
Hmm.
and the things that they consistently experience. You're trying to connect with people's broad ideas. But I find so much joy in this because I get to experience storytelling in a much more fantastical way.
Yeah.
Uh, being able to talk about dragons and magic and wizards and eldritch beings and the way that these stories tie our communities together
Hmm.
has
Hmm.
been just magnificent. And it has been so much easier. I used to so struggle with writing music,
Really?
and it would take me months, like 6 months to write a single song.
Wow. Okay.
Uh, and doing this, I've now written over like 300
Oh
songs.
my God. Okay.
And and it was just separating myself
Hmm.
and being inspired in a way that didn't feel like end game. And what I mean by that is before I would put so much pressure on myself that every song I wrote had to be the one,
Okay. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And with this, when I'm writing in a way that is more fun,
Hmm.
then and when I've written as many songs as I've written, I haven't had to worry so much about, okay, this one song is the one song, this is going to define my career. No, this is hopefully it'll be a great song. I'm going to do my best on it, and then I'm going to move forward.
Okay.
And it's not my job to determine which song is my best song.
Right.
It's my job to see where the inspiration takes me,
Hmm.
do a good job on the song, spend enough time so that it feels finished in my eyes, and then
Hmm.
I give it to the public and it becomes theirs.
Right.
And I see what they think of it and I see how they interpret it. And I feel that when we as creatives do those things, when we are creating,
Hmm.
if we put too much pressure on ourselves to
Yeah.
write the song or do the piece of art
Yeah.
or do take the photo,
Hmm.
it it means that we burn out a lot faster because it's not going to be the photo. It's
Right.
not going to be a piece of art.
Right.
Our journey as artists, hopefully, is to just get better and better and better over time. In the same way that you would like invest in like the stock market, you just leave it there,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And eventually, it just gets better and better and better. If you're
Until
constantly
yeah.
trying to, if you're constantly trying to like sell things off and like, you're gonna burn yourself out,
Right.
right? Sell and buy and uh, guests and you're gonna burn yourself out.
Right. Right.
So as a creative, I want to encourage people to not think, hey, don't think about the musician you're going to be in 6 months.
Hmm.
Think about, with constant practice, who you're going to be in 5 years, in 10 years.
Okay.
And that's a much more healthy way
Yeah.
to set expectations with yourself so that, again, you don't get frustrated that in 6 months you're not a virtuoso on guitar.
Right.
Like that's not...
Like in 6 months, you're not like multi-million-dollar famous for like acting or something. Just do the
Exactly.
thing. Just do the thing. So Dungeons and Dragons specifically is very, very niche. It's like we're small, we're a big community in of ourselves, but compared to everything else, we're pretty small. Why Dungeons and Dragons for your art? Why Dungeons and Dragons for your acting, for your music?
I think it goes back to, again, one of the reasons I started writing music was to become a good storyteller. I wanted to tell great stories, and I've always wanted to be a good storyteller. Ever since I was a little kid, I looked up to people who were good storytellers. So with D&D, with tabletop RPGs, that is so built into the very fabric of the game
Right.
that it feels so worth it. In connecting with other people who love great stories, and we have such a great opportunity to add that idea of group storytelling, where we aren't telling somebody else's story, we are telling our story, our group story, our great adventure, and that is just special. It's just so special.
It is.
My friend Dylan, and I wrote a song about this, said that memories forged in fiction take up autobiographical space in our memories.
Okay.
And this
I
is
like
based
that.
on a study. So when we go on an adventure, and when we slay a dragon, or we get the save the town, or we experience loss of a beloved friend, like those are things that we think back on and we remember as a part of our lives.
Yes.
And that's so unique to this hobby. That's so unique to this game. And I find that super inspirational. And that's why, that's why I love what I get to do every day, is to hopefully connect with people who are already doing that, and also inspire people who want that to be their life.
So you also are you're a DM. You DM.
Yeah.
I've watched some of your stuff. But is that something that you want to be the forefront of what you're doing, or is the music and acting the forefront, and DMing is just part of the adjunct, or the help to hold it up?
As a GM or as a DM, I love being able to provide really good, like, emotional payoffs. I love being able to connect people together. So, like, connecting characters together in really unique ways. I love the idea of making moral quandaries, and I want people to love the game. And do I think that I am, like, the best GM in the world? Of course not. Like, I look up to so many other just even friends of mine who GM amazing games. But, like, in the same way that I take the same approach to GMing as I do to my art, is that over time I'm going to get better and better and better the more I do it.
Right.
So pushing myself and doing it professionally, GMing with strangers, for example, is a really great way to get very good at GMing. Yeah. So I love playing in those types of games. I absolutely want to be a GM that people can look at me and be like, oh yeah, Weston will run a great game for you. That is my hope. I'm not trying to, I know where my weaknesses are in GMing, and I'm not trying to be something that I'm not. But I also giving myself credit for where I am, starting as a GM with my group, for example, and running that game for 6 years.
Okay. Wow.
And then finally reaching a conclusion, like finishing a 6-year campaign, is one
wow.
of the best, most gratifying things that I've ever done. So I have a lot of passion when it comes to GM. And I, yes, like, do I want to put that more in the forefront? Absolutely. But I think that the unique thing I bring to this community is definitely my approach with music.
Right.
So I definitely tend to lead with that because it's different. It sets me apart. And as any musician can tell you, like, it's the things that make you different that are the things that people will pay attention to.
Yeah. you you have a huge following on Instagram, on TikTok as well. I'm not sure what it is on Twitch, but I'm quite sure it's just as big. But what advice would you give someone who is deciding or trying to decide if they want to fall into the TTRPG world as for a living? It's not it's obviously something easy, but if you had to give some advice or wanted to tell, like, help someone go along that path, what advice would you give them?
I think the main advice I would give them is to make a lot of friends.
Okay.
Get to know a lot of people,
Yeah.
because that's really where the opportunities are gonna come from. And I always tell people that the people who you become friends with when you're like first starting out,
Mm-hmm.
and the people who you communicate with, those people will change, obviously, kind of
Right.
slowly over time. But if you're building up really good relationships, if your actions are good
Mm-hmm.
and they are admirable, and you're supporting your community, and you are rising with the people who are around you, and you're not trying to, depend on, making connections with the biggest people in the state. If your focus is paying attention and getting to know people, and like that has been the most important lesson that I continue to learn, and the thing that has helped me the most is to be a good person
Yeah.
in this space, and do your best to continue to grow and continue to do better and better.
Mm-hmm.
And being good will give you opportunities. Getting to know the people who actually run the space and
Yeah.
who aren't just like the stars of the space,
Mm-hmm.
quote unquote.
Mm-hmm.
Getting to know the showrunners,
Yeah.
uh, the producers, the people who are doing the work,
Yeah.
and giving them the respect that they deserve is going to get you so much further than just fulfilling your ego and getting the pictures with the people who are big in the space.
Right. Right.
Um, and again, I'm not downplaying people meeting their heroes. I think that's very cool. I think that's a part of
Mm.
my job that I never take for granted,
Okay.
is to be at an industry party, and I'll just be like just sitting at the bar, and I'll have my chair turned around, and I'll just look at all the other, like, all the people talking to each other,
Mm-hmm.
and I'll just take that in, and I'll experience a moment of love,
Oh.
and I will just log that memory away of, like, I feel so grateful to be in this space with
Right.
these amazingly talented people. Um, and I think the other thing is to take your opportunities when you have them, but also know that, like, more opportunities will come. If you are in the
Yeah.
space, that not everything has to be right then.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you have that confidence that, like, I will be back, we will be in the space together again, we will be friends eventually.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, that attitude is
Mm-hmm.
going to help your mental so much better. I'm a big tennis player. I just recently started playing pickleball, and I love it. There's like silly fun
Yeah,
games.
what is the
Um,
difference between pickleball and tennis? I don't understand. Like, it seems like the exact same thing. I've they put up a whole temporary pickleball court in front of fire department headquarters, which is where I work, and I'm like, that's a tennis court. It's the same thing.
yeah, you can think of pickleball like a mix between tennis and ping pong. Uh,
Okay. Okay.
it has kind of that kind of vibe.
Okay.
Um, so a little bit smaller courts, like you use paddles instead of like stringed rackets,
Right.
stuff like. Anyway, it's very fun to have a good time. The reason I bring it up, is that those games are all about your mental,
Right.
right? And people who play like competitive, video games will tell you the same thing: is that if you lose here,
Yeah.
you're done.
You're done.
So always keeping that like good, positive mental energy,
Mm-hmm.
and that hope is going to bring you through the difficulties. Because another thing that I was told and that I really resonated with is, like, every year, every couple of years, you're in this space, you're going to ask yourself, do I want to do this anymore?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it is such a community, tightly like knit community space,
Yeah.
that when things happen here, everybody knows about it. It's like living in a small town.
Oh yeah.
Like when things
Oh
go
yeah.
down, or like that negative energy permeates so quickly, so you kind of get to asking yourself that question every couple years.
Yeah.
And if you know that that's going to happen, it's a lot less scary when it
Right.
does happen. Uh, and you can ask yourself, oh, I'm just going through that moment now where I'm thinking, do I still want to do this?
Right. Right.
Because it's kind of all a part of that process. Um, so that's the advice that I would give people. There's also I would think, from a business perspective, have something that you want to give people. Have a product of some kind
Right.
in mind. Like try to sell something.
Right.
Because it's really hard when your only source of income is relying on everybody else to hire you.
Yeah.
That's a
Yeah.
scary place to be. So have
Oh my
something
God.
that you do
Yeah.
that provides value to the community, that they can then say like, oh yeah, I want to support this creator. I like what they make. Whether that's NPCs that you do, or monsters, or adventures, or like in my case, music, right? Like
Right.
have something to offer your community so that you give them an opportunity to support you.
Right. Right.
And provide the more opportunities you give your community to support you, then the more often they will.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think that would be my advice.
That's awesome. I like that. I like that advice a lot. So, you're all over social media, including Spotify and YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, here on Twitch. They're very different from each other, obviously. So, what is the difference between the social medias that you find um, is a benefit to grow, and something that you're like, I should never be on this platform?
Yeah, every social media site is different,
Right.
and I think that for me it makes it really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
It keeps the job, keeps me constantly guessing about the content that I'm making.
Mm-hmm.
Some things do really well, and some things do nothing. I
Yeah.
mean, just stop dead, and it makes you really question yourself sometimes. For like,
Mm-hmm.
Twitter or whatever is a completely different platform than Instagram, which is a
Yes.
completely different platform than TikTok.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously there are some very different from YouTube and Twitch. So like finding what it is that you do that is unique,
Mm-hmm.
that a platform supports, and then kind of going in on that platform for a while, I found to be the
Right. Right.
best solution. So really focusing on growing one platform at a time, and then doing maintenance
Mm-hmm.
later on. So go all in on Instagram, go
Right.
all in on X, whatever it is that you are most passionate about. Like if you have 14 thoughts a day, which I do not, I have only a couple brain cells, several of which belong to my family, right? Like I only have so many. But some people just are great at being on Twitter and sharing out their like wild thoughts that they have throughout the day,
Right.
and that's fun for them. For me, I initially started on Instagram, and my favorite thing about Instagram is that DMs on Instagram are really well relegated,
Mm-hmm.
and they're easy to like. It's relatively easy to communicate with somebody via Instagram. So for me, I'm all about making personal connections with people.
Mm-hmm.
So I would see somebody's story, and I would be able to just send them a message and be like, "Hey, this, that, and the other thing. Or
Right.
this is really cool. This thing that you're doing." And I've made hundreds of friendships
Okay.
because I just love getting to know people. So
Yeah.
on Instagram, I feel like that's the best platform to get to know people and to have
Mm-hmm.
conversations like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot harder on TikTok. It's a lot harder on.
Oh God,
It,
it's
it,
hard. It's so hard on TikTok. Yeah, TikTok is not the place for community per se. It's very, very strange uh, place to be. I feel like it's just to garner a following and then try and get them someplace else, which is kind of hard. Um, if you had to uh, if someone said to you, I want to be a professional DM, I want to be a professional TTRPG actor, um, which is honestly, you're really the only one I know as a musician and as an actor at both. Um, how do they transition from just being a regular content creator on TikTok or Instagram or Twitch, whatever, doing regular games to doing what you do?
You know, the best the best advice I can give somebody who wants to do this
Hmm.
is to do it. I mean, you have to learn how to perform. So
Okay.
taking improv classes is a great thing to do, because it will teach you how to play off of other people. It will teach you how to think on your feet.
Hmm. Hmm.
Taking acting classes in general are going to help you with this. But
Right.
being on stream and then watching back your own
Oh, the
streams,
hardest thing in the world. This is the hardest thing in the world.
it is brutal at first, and
Yes.
then you start recognizing how great it is because you start seeing how you are acting
Right.
and how you should be acting.
Okay.
Um, because a lot of people forget, like they bring this mentality, this home game mentality
Hmm.
into the TTRPG performance space, and they forget to perform. They forget that in this space, they get to be over the top, and they
Right.
get to like emote real big and yell and like get like have big emotions and go to that like 11 out of 10. Like
Right.
they can
Right.
do that because that is what's fun about this. It's a performance space.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so if you remember that you are performing on stream, then uh yes, it will feel like it's not going to feel like your home game. It's not going to, because this is not your home
Yeah.
game.
It's
Like
so does not
the
feel that
moment you
way.
add an no the moment you add an audience, you
Mhm.
are performing.
It's so weird. The first time I was just like, the terror. It was just like, hi. It was bizarre. So now it's just, okay, let's do this. Let's go. But it took a while for me to start watching myself back. I think that watching back is one of the hardest things you could do, um, and one of the best advices you could give. So I'm going to take that and run with it. Make
I
it.
also think that for somebody who wants to be a GM or a DM,
Hmm.
professional in the space, you have to know what thing you bring. Like, what is special about you
Right.
that you are bringing something new to the community?
Mm.
If you know what that is, and
Hmm.
if that thing is fun for you to
Okay.
bring, and or not just fun, but like fulfilling to
Hmm.
bring into the space, and you're able to articulate it, that makes your job as as somebody who is trying to advertise themselves as a certain thing
Mm.
so much easier,
Ah, okay.
because you can brand yourself with that idea,
Right.
right? And there are people in the space who are very good, combat encounter runners. So, people who run combat very, very well. There are
Hmm.
people who make maps super, super well. There are people who make the most ridiculous monsters
Right.
super
Right.
well. There are people who are amazing at running community and charity events. So there's a lot of different skills that if you know what you bring to this community, you can then sell yourself in the community so much easier. Um, and I think that's why I've like really stuck with music so well, like so much, is that it's different, it's unique. Like
Yes.
one of my favorite things to do is to take a song and turn it into a one shot,
Oh
right? So
wow,
like so
nice.
like that that kind of idea where like can anybody do that? Absolutely. But because I'm already a musician, it gives it more, it makes sense with my brand,
Right, right,
right? um and I'm not saying you have to pigeonhole yourself, but when you are getting started in the space, oh yeah, you're that person who dot dot dot. You're
right.
that GM who is amazing at making character names. You're that GM who like, and choose something that's fun to you. Like choose something that will keep you going and will
Hmm.
keep you
Hmm.
engaged.
Right,
Oh yeah, you're that GM who makes music,
right.
who writes TTRPG music. So have a thing and bring something new to the community. And a lot of people, especially our community, just needs a lot of diverse voices.
Hmm.
Still, like we are still a very like white dominated space. We still see like how many streams do we see that are all, white dudes. Like
Yeah, yeah.
I drop my jaw every time. I'm like, how are we still doing this? We're like, so this is my call.
It is.
You know,
It is one of the
we
things that I wonder all a lot. It's one of the things I kind of like. I know so many good and great GMs and players who are just above and beyond, who are people of color, black people, Indian, whatever, and they are, myself included, behind a wall of like, who? Like, hold the wall of who are you talking about? So, and it's kind of hard to break through that, and I think a lot of it comes from just what people are used to. So they're used to seeing a certain amount of certain faces on the screen. So seeing someone like me or someone like Neo Soul God is just not the norm. I think that's part of it.
I am somebody who am so excited by certain like at PAX East I just went to the DemiQuest.
Oh, I wanted to go next.
DemiQuest is so good.
Oh.
And there's something so beautiful and cathartic about seeing people explore their cultures through this game.
Yes.
That like that is so amazingly inspiring to think that we are just scratching the surface of what we could be doing in this space. At the moment that we see, again, like DemiQuest, the moment that we see these people with this massive cultural background just starting to to run this show and to see them experiencing their culture through Dungeons and Dragons. Like that's just so cool to me. That makes me so happy. And you mentioned Neo Soul God and like the idea of seeing fantasy through the lens of a Black creator and somebody who's like made their own like night skin race and like exploring what it means to be Black in fantasy. Like there's so many amazing opportunities that are still out there, and so much more for this community to experience, that it makes me excited about this space. So
I love that answer. So you talked about Dungeons and Dragons earlier, how you kind of like dragged your fellow bandmates along with you. Why Dungeons and Dragons? Why not? Please don't come for me, people in chat. But why not Pathfinder? Or why not Vampires with the Masquerade? Like, why not one of those? Why Dungeons and Dragons?
I didn't know anything about TTRPGs when I got started. I was just somebody who was interested in, I thought these board games that we were playing were really fun. And I was somebody who, being in like bands and different things, I was active on social media. I was somebody who was always trying to figure out how to get people's attention to listen to my music, right? And so I was on Imager, I was on Reddit, I was on, I did some Instagram stuff, I was on Facebook, I did all those things. And on Imager one time I was scrolling through and again, I had mentioned that I was really into voice acting, right? So the algorithm found me out somehow and presented me in 2015 that all these voice actors were playing Dungeons and Dragons, right? And it ended up being Critical Role. So like many people, that was my first introduction to tabletop RPGs. Like I didn't know about, I barely knew about D&D, let alone anything else. So it wasn't like I made a conscious choice. I thought that's just what this was. Like I didn't know, and so for me to make that connection through voice acting and being like, oh, there's voice actors playing this game. That was the thing that I was like, well, I'm not like D&D is super nerdy, so I probably will never play that. I do want to see what these voice actors are doing. That was really the hook for me. And then since then, I've been able to play Pathfinder. I've been able to play, Monster of the Week. I've been able to play mazes. I've been able to play, like all these, masks. I've been able to play all these really like cool, neat games. And again, there are thousands and thousands.
There's so many.
Thousands.
There's so many. There's so many of them.
I felt very fortunate. Last year, I got to play this game called the Mecha Hack, where you're essentially a bunch of pilots playing with Gundams. Really, and it was just very fun. It was a very cool system. It was one of those roll low systems where you have your stats, you have to roll underneath your stats. And we had such a blast. It was just a one shot, but there's just so many amazing games out there to play. But that is why
Why
You know,
Dungeons and Dragons, right?
that's why, because like it's coming from somebody who never experienced any tabletop RPG my
Mm-hmm.
entire life.
Oh
The
wow.
first
Okay.
thing I did was when I was like, I don't even know how old I was at that point. What, 29?
Mm-hmm.
When I started playing in 2015. So yeah, so I had to convince my friends that no, this is way more than just some nerdy game,
Right.
right?
Right.
And I did it very intentionally.
Mm-hmm.
I What I ended up doing was I got a game called Mice and Mystics,
Okay.
which is an RPG in a box,
Mm-hmm.
essentially. And you run through this story campaign, and you're all a bunch of these little mice.
Oh.
And in each mouse has a different class, and you gain magic items, and you level up. And so through that, I convinced them, hey, wouldn't D&D be fun? And and eventually they were like, okay, I stopped talking about Dungeons and Dragons,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and they just started understanding how fun it was
Mm-hmm.
to run a game where they each had their characters and they each kind of leveled up over time, and they got to kind of act out these scenes a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And then I specifically remember one of my friends turning to me and being like, okay, Weston, I think we're ready for you to run D&D for us. What a moment for me.
I know, you're like,
first
yes!
dose is free. Yes,
It's
absolutely.
like, yes.
So once that happened, then I really had to. I remember watching lots of Matthew Colville videos,
Mhm,
and trying to learn to be a good DM like right off the bat. And
right.
and I've made tons of mistakes.
Right,
We
right.
all do.
Yeah,
And would I go back and change a bunch of the things that I did? Absolutely. But I did my best,
Mhm.
like, and I learned from my mistakes, and it's made me better. So I guess that is why Dungeons and Dragons, and that's how I was able to convince my friends to play. Just microdosing.
Yeah, exactly. Just sprinkle it. It's two ways: sprinkle
Truth
it
is people.
around, or drag them kicking and screaming to the table. That was my way. It was like, come to my house. I'm gonna feed you. We're playing Dungeons and Dragons. Shut up. Like that was it. That was the whole.
Good
thing.
on you.
Yeah.
I honestly think that the biggest hurdle people have to overcome when it comes to this game is learning how to play again.
Yes.
Because I remember that being the thing that I needed to reteach all these players,
Yeah.
was that, like, it feels childish because we are best at it when we're kids.
Right.
It's not a childish hobby.
No.
People conflate the two, right? Like,
Right.
it, role-playing games are, like I mentioned earlier, they're vulnerable.
Yes.
And in my opinion, the strongest people are the ones who can express vulnerability. So people are weak at it.
Right.
They are weak. As adults, we grow weak at play.
Right.
So we have to build up those muscles again. And so I always tell people when they're joining a game or they're new or whatever it might be, I always say the first half hour is going to feel kind of weird. It's going to feel like you're a kid again.
Right.
And I encourage them, keep pushing through. Push past those initial feelings, and just have fun and just trust me.
Right.
And once they give in, once they understand that, like, it's safe, this is a safe place to play, it's a safe place to be vulnerable, the whole world opens up, for them. I'm getting emotional about it, but like,
I love it. I love that.
Learning how to play as an adult is so important. And it makes life so much more bearable when we rediscover play.
Right.
At least it has made my life so much more wonderful.
It has made life like not only bearable but like also interesting, because once you start playing,
Fulfilling.
Like, yeah, it's very like that. Feel much better doing this. So you fell into D&D. Were you ever a long-term player, or did you kind of just like, we're gonna do this D&D thing, I'm gonna convince my friends, I'm DMing? Were you ever the player, just for the fun of it?
I have never finished a campaign as a player.
Really?
Yeah. I've only ever finished campaigns as a DM.
Okay.
And I think it comes down to, like, I really do love being the GM. I really love it. And it's one of those things where I think, yeah, I just do. I love GMing. I love being a player in a game as well. Um, and I believe that being a player helps you to be a better GM. So like if you are somebody who is in that forever GM role, you will never become the GM that you should be until you play a lot as a player.
Yes.
So find opportunities to be a player, so that you can learn what it feels like to be DM'd.
Yeah, yeah.
uh,
I like that BDF.
yeah, like it's just so important so that you know, like, oh, if I would have, because as a player, you sometimes you'll be like, oh, I wish they would have let me dot dot dot, or I wish they wouldn't have dot dot dot. And then as a GM, you can be like, oh, I need to make sure that I'm applying those things,
Right.
and I'm looking for those moments. I'm letting my players speak. But no, I've never finished a campaign as a player, which is so sad because I would so love that.
That'd be so much
But
fun.
at the same time, I am so fortunate that I've been able to run and finish like extended campaigns as a GM. That is not something that every GM can say.
Yeah.
And for me, it's happened on multiple occasions.
Oh, jealous.
So that's very cool.
Jealous. That usually I have a bunch of I love my one shots. I adore running one shots. I adore being in one shots. But I have not been in a long campaign in a very long time, and I don't totally miss running a long campaign and being a player in a long campaign. So, question about when you have actors or artists at your table as a GM, how permissive are you in letting them lean into their acting ability as opposed to just being their authentic self as their character?
Interesting. I have learned that not everyone plays this game in the same way. And that was one of the best lessons that I could have learned, I think, and that I'm glad I learned pretty early on, is that I had a player who really just wanted to kind of be around the table and loved rolling dice and loved hitting things hard and make big numbers go boom, and like she didn't like the acting part of it. She didn't like the improv part of it so much. But she wanted to be there with her friends, and she wanted to like be a badass when it came to like combat, right?
Right.
So I pushed her too much, is what I did, and because of that, I think that I gave her the impression that this game wasn't for her, and that's one of my biggest regrets, is that I didn't. Because and like, how would I have known, right? Because at the time I was teaching all my players how to improv. I was teaching all my players how to role play. But I think I gave her the wrong impression about what this game is. So when it comes to that question, I want to make sure that other people don't make that mistake, and that if people aren't into doing the voices and to doing the improv and to just being kind of an accessory to the party and kind of being an NPC of the party, like, let them, like again, we're not talking about like on stream performance stuff. We're just talking about like sitting around a table and being with your friends. Let that player maybe just roll for things more often. Like, don't make them think that they have to come to the table and think as hard. Like, let it be a game for them. Say like, hey, if like, what would you say to this person, right? Like, roll persuasion. And just have them roll, and then you can say what that thing would be, right?
Okay.
So I would say I am now very flexible when it comes to the players at my table. Like, how much they put in, I'm going to still allow them to feel needed, still help them to feel amazing about the things they're doing. I'll still describe their events in the same way, because I'm going to be the same DM that I am, right? But I also want my players to feel good and comfortable, and it's also very important that you set your expectations about, this is the type of campaign it's going to be, and making sure that your players are going to be invested in the type of game you want to run. You want it to be fun for you as well. But as a GM, running just kind of standard home games, like, I do love it when my players will roleplay with me, but not everyone is that way, and that's okay. Like,
Right.
let them play, let them be there, let them have fun. Um, and give your other players those opportunities to do all that other wild stuff. So,
So
uh,
along those lines, then, when you have someone at the table who's super quiet, who's, kind of playing the NPC role, but trying to be a badass, um, do you sometimes sense they want to do more, they want to be more into role playing, and how do you, for lack of a better term, I guess, get them out of their shell? I know that's like a cliche thing to say. People say get them out of the shell, but how do you get that person who you can sense that they want to do it, but they're unsure? How do you pull them out of their shell?
oh, I have so many ideas. So the first one is get them around a campfire. Like not actually, but
Right.
get the party, around a campfire, and what I have done is I had them, and I forgot where I learned this. I think it may have been Dale Kingsmill, but I was watching somebody who said that, like, get a deck of cards and have each person draw a card, right? And based on the suit that they draw, so you can just say, like, hey, you're all playing cards at this table or around a campfire one night, and you have them all draw a card. And there's something very interesting about having a card that makes it feel more committed, where they like have to do a thing.
Yes, yes.
Because they're holding a thing that they have to do. So for each suit, there was something that you needed to share, whether it was a secret. I think it was a secret, a favorite memory as a child, and like each suit had its own thing, right? So they eventually went around this campfire and they all shared something for the first time. As a group, they had never shared their backstories with each other. I was kind of facilitating the adventure and taking them through the story, right? But they had never shared whether these things were prepared or not. And as they started sharing, they started understanding why I was telling the story I was telling.
Okay.
Because I was using all their backstories, and then all their stories started intertwining, and there was this light bulb moment.
That is so cool.
Where they were like, wait, if we talk to each other, that's a part of the game?
Like, oh, we can interact.
Yeah. So that was a really great learning moment. And I'll say one other thing was that there's a player in my home game that she is fantastic. She is such an amazing player, and she's probably one of the quietest friends that I have. But quietest and most anxious friends that I have. But she is an absolutely phenomenal role player when I give her the opportunity. So there is a guide that was released for Thieves' Cant.
Okay.
And how to use actual like Thieves' Cant in your game.
Oh, I think I know what you're talking about.
So offline,
Okay.
I sent this. I said, hey, watch this video, because she was playing a thief at the time, or playing a rogue, right? And I said, hey, watch this video, and next session we're gonna have a conversation. So she learned how to kind of do that Thieves' Cant stuff.
Oh, that's amazing.
And then in the next session, her and we went to a tavern somewhere. And while the entire rest of the party was like, what's going on? Her and I then have this entire conversation in Thieves' Cant.
Oh.
And so you're talking about how to like give them the opportunities, fabricate opportunities.
Oh wow, I'm feeling that.
for them to do something amazing, and for them to just blow all the other players out of the water.
Right.
And it will feel very unforced. It will feel like, what magic is this?
Like, what sorcery have you done? Like, how did you do the thing to make her do that?
Like, fabricate those moments, like make those things happen offline, and make them very character appropriate. I mean, she was playing a rogue, who was like from an underground, organization, and like it made perfect sense that her character would know all these things. And it was one of my favorite moments in the mini game.
Oh, no.
So fabricate moments for that individual to shine and set them up for success. I gave her the prep time. I gave her exactly what was going to happen. And then since then, she has felt so good about like engaging in those types of conversations with me, and knowing that we're gonna have a great time.
That's amazing. I love that. I'm totally taking that now. Like the next thing, I'm totally. So I am the firm believer that D&D people who GM and DM for whatever TTRPG for that matter, the best way that we learn how to be really good DMs and GMs is to steal. We
Yeah,
steal
absolutely.
we steal
1000%.
ideas all the time. Like it's not really stealing, it's borrowing, but and it's perfectly fine. So I'm totally taking that idea. We had talked about earlier about how TikTok can be. I don't want to say toxic because it's not toxic, but it can be tumultuous. Um, Especially within the community, as about how small it is. Things rapid fire happen a lot, and the whole community knows about it. Right now, there's a debate on TikTok with my previous guest, Riley Elliott. They have proposed a question: uh, Are DMs and GMs, do they have absolute power and control over their table and their players, or is it a collaborative storytelling, and it should be uh, known and told in session zero what to expect. And that comes along the lines of fudging dice and letting your players know that you're doing it, or not telling them at all and just doing it because you're the DM and that's what I say goes.
I love this question. I believe that the best role that a GM can play, the GM is there to control momentum.
Mm,
I think that that is the most important thing that a GM can do on a table,
right,
is making sure that things are not stagnating.
right,
That is your role, and games can stagnate in a lot of different ways. They could stagnate because something is brought up, like something like inappropriate happens. It can be that you know the players do something completely unexpected. It can be that they aren't running combat efficiently. There's a lot of different things that can lead to a stagnant game. And I believe that it is the job of the game master or storyteller, whatever you want to call it, to control momentum in the game,
right,
to make sure that things are moving forward. And sometimes that does involve fudging dice rolls.
right,
Sometimes that does involve railroading, railroading your players. Hopefully, they're tools, and if you overuse a tool, then your players are going to start to catch on,
right,
right? So these are tools to help with the momentum of the game. So like, and there's a lot of different. You learn as a GM to use those tools so that it doesn't feel forced,
right,
and you are using those tools to the benefit of your players.
okay,
Like, or and yeah, and again, I said it right, to the benefit of your players, not necessarily the benefit of your player characters,
right,
but the benefit of your players, so that they're having fun.
right,
You are the one in charge of that momentum.
right. I agree.
So all of those different things that you had mentioned about, again, fudging dice rolls, whatever else,
Right.
are tools in our tool belt to control the momentum of the game and to help things run smoothly. So absolutely, I think that we need to use those tools. And if you aren't using those tools, then you can just take down the GM screen, and it will. I mean,
What's the point? Yeah.
don't hide your roles then.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that I think that would be my commentary,
So,
is that
do you think it should
use those tools to the. Oh, go ahead.
do you think it should be carte blanche though? Like, should you let your players know at session zero? Listen, there are times where I'm going to be doing things that you won't know for the benefit of your game and fun, and also for the benefit of story. Or do you just say, this is how the game's going to be, and I'm not going to let you know what's going to happen, and never even let them know what's happening?
That is such a weird mindset. I because for me, like I'm playing this game with them. Like I've never had to conceptualize whether or not I'm a tyrant or not.
Right.
I want my players to have a sense of surprise and intrigue, and at the same time, I will also I will ask them questions about the world that I don't even know.
Right.
So like we are building this story together. I use both things often. One thing that I am still not yet very vulnerable with my players. I don't want them to know where my prep ends. So like and where my improv begins, right?
Okay.
there's this concept in singing where you have like different registers of your voice,
Yes.
right? You
Yes.
have a chest voice, you have
Mhm.
you kind of a mid voice, then you have a head voice.
Yes.
And between each of those, there are these things called breaks,
Yeah.
where to go, like
Mhm,
there's
mhm,
these
mhm.
little breaks in your voice, right? Uh, Really good singers train themselves to kind of eliminate those breaks in their voice. So as GMs, I hope that we are training ourselves, and like for me, it's a matter of training myself so that that break in my
Mhm.
story doesn't
Mhm.
feel like a break, so that my transition from breaks into improv feel
Mhm.
very smooth. And that it doesn't always happen. Sometimes everybody gets caught with the
Yeah.
question of
Yeah.
oh, what's their name, and then you're
Well,
like, I
crap.
have forgotten every name in
Like
existence. Like,
their name is
names don't exist. Like, what are you talking
G-Force
about?
RTX 20.
Exactly.
What?
And that's fine. Like,
Right.
it's totally okay to be like, I didn't name this person. This person's name is chopped wood, and I don't know why, but it is now. Um, and so the idea that like I would go into a game thinking that I was some kind of tyrant, um, is wild.
Yeah, that is the whole premise of this argument is that there are a bunch of people who purport to be GMs and DMs saying that it's my table, what I say goes, the players have no say, and that is the end of it. If I want to kill their character, I will, and that is weird.
That's wild. I mean, I like what? Like, go write a book. Like, just like I don't know. Like, I think that somebody who uses like I don't know, that just doesn't sound like a very fun. Like, who would say like, oh, I want to play in your game? Like, I don't. Who
Like,
would say that? I don't understand.
I mean, I think new players gotta kind of get stuck in that type of like they sit down with a GM, not
Rules
really,
mentality.
yeah, not really know what to expect, and then they get stuck like, what do I do? You know, so I mean that kind of sucks. But I kind of want to like move along those lines of back to your music a little bit. Um,
Yeah.
you spoke about how the music industry is obviously not the best in promoting new artists and getting music out there. Um, with what you do with TTRPG and the music that you create, do you plan on releasing your music to a more broader audience through the music industry, or do you plan on just staying independent and doing it yourself?
Um, if you're asking if I would ever get signed to a label, I don't know. Labels are really just banks. Like, labels are banks providing loans to artists.
Right.
That's really all it is. And um, do I think that they have networks and connections and things like that that they could use to your benefit? Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
But I have seen again and again that currently a lot of these businesses are taking advantage of these artists, and I'm
Yes.
really like happy to see places, Live Nation getting sued at the moment and hopefully
Yeah.
getting
And
broken
Ticketmaster.
up.
Yep.
Yeah, because their practices are extremely predatory. Not that they would
Yes.
ever want somebody like me, but
Mm-hmm.
I'm just saying like that idea has permeated in the industry for a long time, and I think that if you work really hard at building an audience and finding your people,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and understanding that like yeah, this is probably not the way to make the millions and millions of dollars or whatever, like that's fine, but find your people and let those people support you,
Mm-hmm.
because then you can continue to make music that makes you happy.
Yeah.
um and again, it's a tough ask, right? Because not the music that everyone the music that each artist wants to do
Mm-hmm.
is not necessarily going to be the thing that everyone listens to,
Right.
or it might not be the thing everyone listens to right now.
Mm-hmm.
So it can feel very lonely and solitary and tough. But there are a you know what 8 billion people in the world, and I always tell people, find your 1,000.
Right.
Find your 1,000 who are going to support you,
Mm-hmm.
um, and you can make it work with that. Um, so like don't get freaked out by the little numbers, and don't get overwhelmed by the big numbers. Find your people and build your community, And that is where the joy is going to come in.
Yeah.
That is where uh, the opportunities are going to happen for you. But again, it takes vulnerability, it takes transparency,
Yep.
to 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 kind of let your audience know that, like, when things are changing, when you're sick, when you're overwhelmed. But that's your community. That's kind of what they're there for, right?
Right. I
I,
like that.
I know that's a little bit roundabout, but um, I think that is my answer to that question.
That's perfectly.
to,
That's
to that
perfectly.
question.
That's your answer. That's perfectly fine.
Yeah.
So let's go a little bit back to D&D. Um, Wizards of the Coast.
Yeah.
People know that I'm not a big fan of them, but that's okay. Wizards of the Coast, they had a misstep recently. They've redesigned, not redesigned. They've decided to take away the way that you're able to buy things from the marketplace, and said that even if you have bought the little things, now you need to buy the entire book or the entire collection. Um, do you think all these missteps that they've done or they've been doing is beneficial to the game, or do you think they're intentionally destroying Dungeons and Dragons and alienating their target audience?
When I first heard about this, honestly, I had no idea you could even piecemeal buy stuff.
Really? Oh no!
I did not know. I was just buying the books that I wanted.
Oh
I
no!
wanted all the things to. So I was like, wait, you could do that?
Oh, that sucks!
So it's like, knowing that now, I was like, well, and I guess my perspective as a GM is a little different. Like, yes, do I think people should be able to do that? Absolutely, that's
Right.
amazing. Especially players, because
Right.
like, as a GM, I'm like, yeah, I buy the whole books because I don't know what my players want to play,
Right.
and I want them to have all the options available to them, right?
Right.
But it's pretty consistent that large corporations make a lot of mistakes. They do, and they will continue to do so.
Yes,
And
yes.
I find it really interesting that people are always like surprised when when these things happen. Like, like, there are hundreds of people who work at these companies.
Yeah, yeah.
And like, yeah, they're gonna screw up, and so it is our job as a community to consistently hold their feet to the fire,
Right.
consistently hold them accountable when they do screw up, and hopefully they don't ruin the game for us. And I mean, I've seen, like, especially a lot of creators in the creator community who have been wonderfully vocal
Yes.
about when Wizards is doing something that they fear will could break the hobby.
Right.
And we saw this last year with OGL, right?
Right.
So like, that was a huge deal, and I mean, it worked.
Yeah.
Like straight up, it worked.
Everyone is like, seriously?
And we got the things we asked for.
Right.
Like, so as a community, like, this, yes, Wizards owns this game. They are the one profiting off of Dungeons and Dragons, but I have found, like, our community to be so unified
Yes.
when it comes to these things, that I am, I choose to be hopeful for the future of these things, and for not just for the future of, like, Dungeons and Dragons, but I choose to be hopeful for the future of our community.
Yes.
And new games, like, because of that thing. Look at all, like, all these other amazing things that have, like, come out from all these different companies.
Oh yeah.
And it's encouraged so many people to try all sorts of new games as well. I believe that if we, like, honestly, like, D&D Beyond, in my opinion, is the best way to get somebody into a crunchy, like, something as crunchy as Dungeons and Dragons is.
Right.
Because character creation in crunchy systems is so complex.
Yes.
It's really hard. And I mean, Wizards didn't make D&D Beyond.
Right.
Like, it was a different company who was like, no, we're gonna try and make this as easy as possible. And I've even found, it's taken my character creation from, like, 2 or 3 hours.
Yes.
I can make a character in, like, 20 minutes.
So easy. It's so much. Oh my god.
So we have these great tools to play this game, And it's also our responsibility, unfortunately, but it's also our responsibility to make sure that we are letting these companies know when they screw up, and we are keeping them accountable,
Yes.
and we, we do our very best so that we
Right.
can continue to play the games that we love.
Right. Right. Right.
Is that is that is
That
that
totally
is that
makes
an answer?
sense. That totally makes sense.
Okay.
Angry People in chat said it's worth noting that the community wasn't the driving force when OGL debacle happened. WotC and Hasbro was suddenly facing legal action from Disney and a handful of other companies, so they backed off. That is true, I think, but I also believe that when the community also said that, well, if you're not going to let us do this thing, we're going to do it anyway and screw you, and you're not going to get anything from us. And
I mean, when Paizo is announcing that they sold their entire year's backlog of Pathfinder 2 ebooks, and that's like, Wizards was that's scary.
Scary, yes. Yeah.
When you sell out warehouses
Exactly.
of products.
Exactly.
So yes, like, great, like, let all the legal action happen in the background, but like, I choose to believe that our community did a very good job,
Yes.
of making sure that we were heard.
Mhm.
And so yes, like, great, like, make sure people are held accountable from all sides.
Right,
Like, yes, absolutely, like, I'm all for that also being true.
Right.
More than one thing can be true at the same time.
100%. So it's always been my opinion, and I've always said this, that people who are content creators are pretty much essentially, you're a producer, you're an actor, you are a director, and you do all these different things.
Yeah.
Pretty much you're a talent agent, you're undiscovered in all these facets. Where do you see yourself in these roles, and do you plan on expanding on these roles sometime in the future?
Are you asking me where I want to be in 5 years? Where do you see yourself?
Where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Great question. That has so I have I'm diagnosed with a lot of neurospicy stuff. And
I think that's
and
most of
one
our
thing
community. I think that's most of our community. Yeah, because me too.
one thing that has helped me a lot is to be very moment by moment focused.
Okay.
Do I have goals for like the type of person I want to be in 5 years? 100%. I want to be the type of person who is, and I've always wanted to be this way because I like to do a little bit of everything. I like to be the editor. I like to be the host. I like to be the guest on somebody's great stream. I like to be all those different things. So narrowing it down has never been something that I'm good at.
Okay.
I think it all comes back to the fact that I love telling stories. I love people, and I love getting to know people. And so whatever talents are required to continue to exist in this space, to continue to make great stories and good music and great entertainment, and to stay, to get to interact with the people who I love interacting with and I love telling stories with, I'm going to do those things. And that is how I keep sane. I guess that is how I don't let the demons win. Is I stay very now focused. About like, okay, what am I doing now? Let me be in this moment here. What is going to help these goals? Because a lot of people think of like career goals, and I think of things in like people goals, in personality goals, in personal growth goals. So like, how am I going to accomplish those things? Those are the things that I really focus on.
That makes sense. So other than the 5-year plan, like, what about personality-wise? What type of strength or personality would someone need to do all the things that you've described? Like, for you, it's music and acting and DMing and doing it all on social media,
Doing videos
and
and
doing
doing
videos
yeah.
and going to cons constantly. What personality trait or strength would someone need to have to be as successful as you are in this industry?
Being fearless goes a long way.
I like that.
Or doing it scared. I guess
Ooh.
goes a long way. I guess
Yeah.
is the better way to say it.
Yeah.
And you run into so much ambiguity, and you have these opportunities that are so like strange is the wrong word, but I'm just going to use that. Like
Yeah.
out of your comfort zone. That
Mhm.
if you forget for a second, like that you can,
Mhm.
um, you're gonna suffer. And also, I would also say to that, have a mindset of grow. You know,
Okay.
like be better, and know that you can become better at
Right.
things,
Right.
and that just because you fail once
Mhm.
doesn't mean that you're done. Like just because you were streaming 2 years ago and that didn't go very well for you doesn't mean that streaming is bad for you now.
Right. Right.
Keeping an open mind and knowing that you are consistently growing and trying things, like that's really all being a content creator is trying something new.
Mhm.
So like when your old stuff stops working, then you have to figure out new stuff.
Yeah.
And people who are stagnant are going to
Mhm.
be left in the dust.
Right.
um, so being able to continually learn is such a cool thing that content creators get to do,
Right.
as opposed to it being like the burden of every content creator. Like
Right.
being able to reinvent things, being able to learn new things. I want to be an as I grow older and older, I
Mhm.
want to be somebody who is just always curious,
Okay.
and who's always wanting to be again that idea of now.
Right.
I always
Right.
want to be now. I don't want to ever be stuck in the past. So for me, that mindset and this job work really well together. And it can be overwhelming, and I think that's where having a community is really, really very important. I do a lot of co-working on like Discords, and I, have my other creator friends. I'm very lucky that my wife is also a social media creator and like
Nice.
does this job too. So we have a lot to talk about all
So
the time.
yeah, you're not going in alone, type of thing.
No, yeah, like she gets it. But yeah, have a community of other creators as well is extremely helpful
I love that.
to get through the hard times.
So we had talked earlier about how when you scroll through Twitch or you scroll through YouTube, and even on TikTok, that D&D is not very diverse. Um,
Yeah.
what advice would you give to white people who want to diversify their tables but really have like no idea how to go about it? Like how do they like who to talk to from their POC friends? Like how to approach them about it who've never done this before?
I can only speak from my personal experience.
Mhm.
There was a really fun series of one shots that I ran. I think it was like 2.5 months. It's like I think it was like 13 different weeks in a row
Okay.
where I was running these one shots. And on each of those one shots, it was like my number one priority. And I would encourage people to do this. Whenever you're working on something, make that thing the most important thing.
Yes.
Uh,
Yes. Oh
and,
my
and,
God.
and then as you get better at it, like it can move down the list because
Right.
you're better at it, right? So you don't have to
Right.
think about it as much. But like for me, it was making sure that every single stream that I had was a diverse cast.
Ooh, I like that.
So and that was weekly.
Oh wow! Every single week.
So every
Impressive.
single week was a new cast of people.
Mhm.
So what did that push me to do? Well, did I have as much time to spend on writing the stories or the one-shots themselves? No, I didn't, because my number one focus was making sure that every single game I ran
Mhm.
felt like a community that represented our table.
Right.
Or our sorry, not a table that represented
Our
our
community. Got you.
There it is. Yeah, I flipped those. So that became my number one goal.
Okay.
So I would say that that's like for a little while, make that your number one goal, and then you'll find people. You'll be like, because you'll be on the lookout, right?
Right.
I mean, it seems obvious. I don't know. Like the other thing that isn't obvious though, that I want my other white content creators to recognize is that when you are invited to a table, that you ask the question, and that becomes your number one priority, right? Like, who is at this table?
Okay.
And being the person who will say, am I the best person to add to this table at this point?
Okay.
Because that's what it takes to make change happen. And that will most likely mean that you might not be added to that table. But for me, again, when it's your number one priority, it's okay.
Right.
Like, and again, keeping that idea that I will have my opportunity, I will have my chance, I will have my moment.
Right.
But you want to do it in a way that is going to flood the space with the type of community you want. And I just hope that, and this is something I've had to do dozens of times. And I've only just started talking about because it could come off very self-righteous, and I did not want it to come off that way. I wanted to express that it made me very uncomfortable.
Okay.
When I would be the last one added to a table, and I look around and I'm like, the heck is going, like, where's our community?
Right.
Like, why? So being that person and having to be that person to say, like, hey, there are other people you can add to this table who will make this game better.
Yeah.
And do I think that I would have made a great member of that cast? Absolutely, I would.
Of course.
100% I would have.
Like, of course.
I'm a white dude. I still got stories to tell. Like, it's fine, but that's if I'm not the one who is willing to do that in our community, then who will?
Right.
So, like, be that person. But as a GM, make it your top priority.
I love that. So, along those lines, then, because I want to get into where you're going to be in July, August time, what would you say to cons that are trying to diversify their cons through grants and other things, but somehow fall short of doing it?
That is a hard question, and I mean, I think you answered the question, honestly. You have to recognize that there are tons of people in this space who want to attend,
Yes.
who are worth bringing in, who are amazing creators, but because of the systems that are currently in place, they are disadvantaged. Like, so we have to help those people get to these places because it's not their fault. like that's and that's really what it comes down to is that these conventions will be like, well, we're not saying they can't come, they just can't make it.
Right.
Do you know why they can't make it? Because we have to make it possible for them to make it.
Right.
Because we at that point we aren't just fighting like white supremacy in the TTRPG space. We are fighting it in like the overall systematic world, space.
Right.
So you have to be very cognizant that in order to get in order to make sure that those people can attend in the future, we have to make it possible for them to attend now. And I'm specifically talking monetarily.
Yes.
Like that's what it comes down to. It has to be worth them, taking time off work, making sure that they have people to, watch their kids or like there's a lot there. And then making sure that they are also promoting those events.
Yeah, yeah. So that which actually brings me to my next question. Then, so when they do get to these cons, like I am going to Gen Con, and I hope to see you there.
Yeah.
I'm so excited. I haven't been to a con in so long. I'm so excited. But I'm going to Gen Con. But how when people of color, Black people and people of color, go get to these cons, and they apply for panels or they try to do these things and they are not accepted for one reason or the other for whatever reason, um, and a lot of the times it's either an oversight or they have applied and they have not been accepted for whatever reason. How do you bridge that gap to get um, people of color and Black people at the table at panels, doing
You
demonstrations and stuff like that?
I hate to say this because I feel like minorities in our country already have to do so much emotional labor, but you have to push back.
Mm.
Like you can't take the first no. And I know that it sucks. Like it
Yeah, it
sucks.
does.
Like there was a me as you know, there was a panel that I submitted for at PAX where they basically said like, hey, we're not accepting you.
Right.
And I wrote an email back and I said, what? Like
Right.
basically, I was like, listen, like there are no other music panels that
Right.
are being submitted.
Right.
There are like our music panel is not only represents a subset of this community that people don't really know about, but also look who's on it. Like
Right.
look what this panel represents.
Right.
Like, don't you want to represent that at your convention? And in writing that email back, that was hard for me to do, and I don't have to do this labor all the time,
Right.
right?
Right. Right.
But sometimes you just need to make them look the reality in the face.
Yeah, I agree, but sometimes like
It's
I'll
it
use me as
sucks.
example. It does suck. I'll use me as
It
example.
sucks.
I've applied multiple times to Gen Con and PAX Australia and PAX East, and I've got no after no after no. And after a while, you're kind of like, I don't want to push back anymore. I'm tired, you know.
Sure.
So and it becomes this vicious circle. So now, who's the onus on? Is it on the cons to say, okay, we need to stop doing this, we need to stop saying no, or is it on the person to, like you said, push back and go, look, I'm worth being here, you know? Like, so how many times do you say I'm worth being here? You know, so I don't know.
Oh, it breaks my heart, is what it does.
Yeah.
We're trying to overcome more than just one thing at
Right.
once, right?
Right.
There's this thing with, like, obviously, like, you look at it from the cons perspective, they want people to attend these panels.
Mm-hmm.
So they are trying to find panels that will appeal to, like, majorities, right?
Mm-hmm.
The majority of people who attend their conventions.
Right.
That's the key, right?
Right.
That's the problem. And at the same time, so here is the bit that I'm going to inspire creators who are making panels
Mm-hmm.
to do. Here's the piece that I hope will help,
Okay.
because I've never ran a convention. I really can't speak from their perspective, you know,
Mm-hmm.
super well. But what I can speak of is somebody who has run panels. I encourage you, if you're somebody who wants to run panels,
Mm-hmm.
to come up with your great panel and then come up with a dream team,
Mm.
and get creators on those panels who that convention will have a hard time saying
Say
no to.
Okay.
And know that those creators, there is a high probability that they
Mm-hmm.
will say yes to your
Okay.
panel, or
Okay.
or at the very least they will say maybe, and that maybe will turn into a yes.
Right. Right.
So I want to encourage newer creators to, when you are looking to collaborate with a quote unquote bigger creator, and it's funny because I don't even consider myself like a big creator. It doesn't feel that way when I have so many friends who are like, you know, 10, 20x followers
Yeah.
what I have.
Yeah.
But I also recognize that I've been in the space long enough to where I've made friends, and
Right.
people generally like might know who I am.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, So like reach out, like create, like shoot for the stars when it comes to these things, and do
Okay.
your best to reach out. And because creators generally are looking for panels to be on.
Really? Okay.
When we go to these panels and we have not been asked, or when we go to these conventions and we have not been asked to be on a panel, feels bad.
Yeah.
It feels real bad. And if they aren't able to, you could say like, hey, do you have any other people who might also be good on this panel, who you could like, you know, ask for?
Right.
So like, don't yeah, so that would be, I think, the bit of advice that I feel like would be the most helpful, to help your panels get noticed.
Okay.
And again, I say that with all the tenderness and love in my heart, when it, you know, like also knowing that it's an uphill battle.
Yeah.
But know that there are quote unquote important people in the space who will want to be on your panel.
Okay.
Because I guarantee you they hopefully, like, I guarantee you they don't think that they are more important, or they are as important as you think they are.
I know exactly.
That was a lot of.
That was a lot of. I know exactly what you mean. I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah.
So speaking of cons, you are going to Gen Con, and you are going to be on 2, I believe, panels, or 2.
3.
3.
Yeah.
Okay. Why those panels? One of the panels is TTRPG music, professional nerd musicians Q&A. That's on Saturday, and dream big, roll higher, make your dream career in TTRPG a reality. That's one of my questions. Also on Saturday. So how did those panels come about, and who's going to be on it with you?
Great question. I'm also on one more that I'm really excited about
Okay.
on Friday, which is Noir is doing a panel on safety tools.
Oh, nice. Okay.
So that'll be a lot of fun.
Okay.
But on Saturday, so my TTRPG music panel is my favorite panel, because that is mine. That's like my little project, my baby that I've been in charge of for 3 years now, and nobody told me to do it. I just had to like. I've never done a panel before. You know, I've never hosted a panel before. I hope I'm good at this. You know, like it's one of those types of things. So, yeah, that is my panel. This time we had 2 people drop out, which is kind of a bummer. But the other 4, me and the other 4 are fantastic. So me, it's going to be Denkels, it's going to be Ginny D, it's going to be Will Savino, and Emmeline Sterling. So all very, very talented singers, musicians, and we just have a ball on that stage. I mean, I try my best to ask questions that are very actionable. When I am a host of a panel, I want my panelists to give answers that are going to inspire the audience members to do things. I tend to not ask very many fluff questions. I tend to like dig deep real fast, and so there's a lot of humor that comes out of those things when you recognize like what drives these people to create.
Right.
So if you want to become a better musician, I guarantee you, if you come to or a better creator in general, you want to be more inspired, come to my TTRPG music panel, and you will leave there, no matter what your choice of art / whatever it is, business advice. We do all sorts of stuff there, mindset, all sorts of great things. So I love that panel. It's so much fun. At PAX Unplugged, we also had Nerd D, and we also had Critical Bar on there, and I adore those 2 so much.
So trying to get him on my channel, Critical Bard. I need them on my channel. I just want to ask all the questions.
TV's great.
Because they are so entertaining. Like I usually watch them their Twitch stream and watch them on TikTok, and I need to ask all the questions. Like that is my thing. I have to ask all the questions. So
when I talk about people who are both strong and vulnerable, CB is one of the first people who come to mind for me. I just admire them so much. Second panel, or the third panel, I guess, is the make your TTRPG dreams. It's a long
Yes,
panel name.
yeah, so yeah. I am
I'm
so
really
excited for that one because it's one of those TTRPGs, one of those things that like no one thinks that it could be a career, that you could do it for a living. Like it was one of those moments like when I explained to my family that I was going to do this, that I wasn't going to quit my job, but I was going to do this. They were like, "What? What is this?" They still don't get it, but um, explain how that's going to work because I cannot wait to see this panel.
Yeah, so I think so. I'll be hosting the panel.
Okay.
Again, moderating panels is like when you ask the question, where do I see myself in 5 years? Doing a lot of hosting and a lot of moderating is something that I love. I love it, and you're also very good at it. These questions have been fantastic. So this panel in particular, I was asked to moderate by my friend Aaron, who is an illustrator and artist. Why am I getting reactions on?
I was just like, what? That was cool. I mean, that's awesome. But
who is an artist who's actually the one in charge of like putting the panel together. So Aaron, very 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 talented, and they were wanting to just get a bunch of other like people who have to do this for work, right?
Yeah.
So that I'm wanting that panel to be extremely actionable. I want people to come to that panel who want to know kind of what it takes, and both the good and the bad. And again, CB is on that panel, and when I asked them to be on there, they were like, I'm gonna tell him how it is, and I'll be like, exactly.
It is not easy.
It's not easy. It's extremely difficult.
Yes.
This is a very niche space, and again, keeping your mind good, being strong, being vulnerable is very important. So that you are getting the support that you need, you have to be vocal. If you ever start being silent about things, that support disappears.
Yes, it does.
So we will be discussing the realities of the industry. Hopefully, we'll be imbuing people with a lot of reality, but also with a lot of hope. And kind of diving into the pluses and the minuses of the space from a kind of a business perspective.
I'm just curious to see like how many people do it and still have a day job, because that is not easy. I still have a day job. I work for the New York City Fire Department and been there for 20 years. But oh my God, sleep is
brutal.
It's brutal, but I cannot wait for that panel.
I'm so excited for you to be there.
I'm so excited for that. So I want to ask, what is the intersection between prepping, like prep, and winging it? Like, do you have in between? Are you all the way prep? Are you all the way winging it? Where are you in there?
I think my prep comes around to the things that I wouldn't be like. What can't I do in the moment? I tend to ask myself that question, right? So the way that I build my one shots and my campaigns are a little bit different than I think most people. I tend to build them in moments.
Okay.
So I think of them as like modules.
Okay.
Where, I have this idea for this thing that could be happening. And like, okay, what type of encounter is this? Is this a puzzle? Is this a fight? Is this a conversation? Like, so I treat all these things like modules.
Oh, I love that.
And the reason I do that is so that my players in the moment, in game, can be very, they can do whatever they want, really.
Right.
And then wherever they are taken, I can then just move this module over to that spot. So maybe they made a choice where this getaway scene that I had planned didn't happen.
Oh.
So I'll just say, like, I wonder, like, okay, so instead of making it a getaway scene, let's just have that happen while they're traveling to this other place. So it limits the amount of work that I have to do. It still gives them these like really amazing planned encounters that are really like interesting and puzzles. But it allows me flexibility to say yes to their decisions a lot more often.
Yes,
because I'm not worried about, again, this idea that like, oh, I have to rip up these pages, right? That's very dramatic. Like, no, like, I had this encounter planned. Maybe it doesn't have to happen in this way.
Right,
Like,
right.
and I have it like I have the encounter and the character, the monsters and all that stuff
Mhm.
all planned out. But it could happen at this different time. It doesn't have to happen right this second.
Mm.
Um, and usually when you let yourself have a little bit of freedom with those ideas, I always say that for me, I do my best thinking when I'm talking.
Mhm.
And so if I give myself a little more space with those encounters, usually they end up being better
Okay. Okay.
than they were when I initially thought.
Right.
Um, yeah,
I like
cool.
that.
Think of your adventures as modules,
Mhm.
and sometimes like I'm just like, okay, what would be fun? And sometimes I'll just like scroll through. It'll be like, this is a creature. Okay, module. Like how would I base it around this weird creature or
Right.
this magic item? How would I base an encounter around this magic item?
Mhm.
Because making adventures is very easy when you just grab a piece of
Right.
lore, a piece of like the goal thing,
Mhm. Mhm.
and then you build backwards. Um, so yeah, so I hope that's helpful in the
That's
quickest way
definitely helpful.
possible.
I like
Build
that.
with modules
I
in mind, and then you can use them wherever you want.
That's awesome. I like that idea. So we're getting close. I want to ask this because I need to know, like, outside of all of this, outside of TTRPGs and D&D, and all the other stuff that you do for this, what other games, pastimes do you enjoy? Like, what's for you?
So I love video games. I've always loved video
Oh,
games.
yes.
I just finished Jedi Survivor, which was very very fun.
Oh,
Such a good game.
haven't gotten to finish it yet. I keep like stopping. I'm like, gotta do this other thing first.
Yeah, the story is fantastic. But yeah, so I love video games.
Mhm.
You can definitely find me playing video games. I have 6 chickens.
No
So
way!
you can find me out back, like cleaning out my chickens' coop or feeding
Oh,
them or
that's so cute.
giving them hugs or chickens are hoot. They're like they're little dinosaurs just running around your backyard making noises, which is funny because my wife initially got them for eggs and I'm allergic to eggs,
Oh wow.
or I'm egg intolerant,
Right.
so I can't eat eggs, at least not like that. So
Chickens.
kind of
Oh.
funny. I have chickens. They're great. I mentioned earlier that I enjoy playing pickleball. I love it. I just think it's so fun, and it's interesting playing with a bunch of kind of retirees. It definitely it expands my my circle a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Keeps me active, keeps me going,
Mhm.
keeps my blood pumping, and I'm pretty good at it because I used to play tennis a lot. So
That's
it's
awesome.
it's a great hobby. I have 3 kids,
Okay.
so lots to do with 3 kids.
Yeah. Yeah.
Love playing board games. Love watching shows with them. We play video games together as well. But raising kids is a whole thing.
That's
Uh,
a thing unto itself.
and then I feel very fortunate that both my wife and I both work at home.
Awesome.
So we're able to spend a lot of time together,
I love
which is
that.
just wonderful. It's great to have a person you can do nothing with and you
Yes.
just love it. It's just like it just feels right.
Right.
So there's a lot of other things too. I'm sure. Obviously, I'm a lot of because I love it. A lot of my time is spent doing this hobby, uh, and luckily I have not fallen out of love with it.
That's great.
So,
I love that. I love
reading new TTRPGs, that's like a fun mix of work and pleasure. But it's a good life. I feel very fortunate that my wife and I's hobbies are so different
that.
that when she involves me in the things that she's doing, it's like a little break from my own little world.
Yeah.
Because she's kind of the outdoorsy hiking, gardening. Let's redo the landscaping.
Oh, no,
let's,
no, no.
let's renovate the entire house. Like that's the person she's a very non-nerd kind of person. So it's a good palate cleanser.
Right.
Whenever I
Right.
need that.
I love that.
So,
So, if you could DM for anyone, dead or alive, real or fiction, up to about 5 or 6 people, who would it be?
these types of questions have always been really difficult for me, and it's
Mhm.
because I think that I run into analysis paralysis.
Oh yes, yes, I've had that.
uh, and that's tough.
Yeah.
Um, if I can be totally frank,
Mm-hmm.
it's the people that I like, who I most would want to be at a table with are the people that I have met in this community.
Ooh.
Like, I know that's the most boring answer, but like,
It's not.
I go to cons because I get to spend my time, my work hours, whatever you call it, getting to know these amazing individuals. And like,
Right.
those are the relationships that I've always like cherished,
Mm-hmm.
are the people that I know. I guess I just don't have very much affection for historical, I appreciate the paths that they've laid and those things, but like,
Mm-hmm.
the I've said it multiple times, but like, for me, it's the people that I know and the people that I meet and the community that I have and the people who have like gotten me through the tough times. And uh I think one person, that's a half funny answer, is like, I think one day I would love to DM for my wife.
Oh,
Uh
that's so sweet.
because I would, and the only reason I wouldn't do it is because she's not like into
Right.
this world, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But if you're asking if I could do it for anybody, that would be very fun.
Oh, that'd be so
Um,
sweet.
so I think I will say that is that I am so incredibly blessed to have such amazing like people in my life
Mm-hmm.
that like I look around at my home game and I can't believe that this is like, these are the people that I get to spend my time with.
Wow.
Um,
Wow.
so, and yeah,
That's awesome. I like that.
again, I like to live in the moment, I guess.
That's so fine. So we've come to the
Yeah.
portion of this whole program where the chat gets asked some questions, and we have a couple questions from Potion and Potpourri. Weston, who's been your favorite artist to collab with?
Oh, that's so tough. All for different reasons. I have gotten to collaborate with a lot of different people. I think the person who I've collaborated the most with is Denkles,
Okay.
who is just the most talented lyricist that I
Mm-hmm.
have I've ever interacted with. I mean, Matt is just astoundingly good.
Okay.
And because lyrics are such a tough thing for me to write, like,
Mm-hmm.
it's the thing that I feel like is the most difficult for me to do.
Mm-hmm.
Having somebody who just thinks of a billion words to say is so cool. I've also gotten to collaborate with Ginny D, and what an amazing talent Ginny is. Like,
Wow.
people don't. I don't think people understand the caliber that Ginny like runs at.
Mm-hmm.
Um, she can do like everything,
Oh
and
wow.
not only can she do everything, she does everything and keeps doing everything. Like, she's been
Right.
doing this for years, and the amount of effort that she puts into it over time is
Mm-hmm.
monumental.
Right. Right.
So being able to collaborate with Ginny
Mm-hmm.
on a song was, for me, like one of those like meet your heroes moments.
Oh,
And
that's.
and now we're just buds, but like at that moment, I still listen back to that song, and because I'm able to kind of take in those moments when they're happening, it still like makes me emotional. Uh, Kind of, that was a moment for me.
Right.
So that was a big deal. And then I've gotten to collaborate with people who live overseas. The the I, collaborations bring me so much joy.
I love it.
But they're also so tricky, because then you tie yourself to a person with art,
Yep.
and people are complicated, right?
Yeah.
People make mistakes
And
sometimes,
people.
uh,
Yeah.
and that can be tricky.
Yeah.
So like, they are my favorite thing to do, which is
Mhm.
collaborate with people and to make art with people. And it can also be the thing that like ties you to maybe other people's actions,
Right, right,
which is so hard.
right.
Anyway, great question. That was a great question.
Also from Potion and Potpourri, they ask, so how hard is it for you to stop performing for things in your life? Ooh.
I got asked in an interview, like, essentially the question is, where does Arcane Anthem stop and where does Weston start?
Yes.
Like that's the question.
Exactly the question.
Right. I grow as a person, so I don't have to think about that.
Okay.
Like, I am admittedly different things to different people, but there are some, and it could be the ADHD in me, it could be the trauma, it could be all sorts of things causing that to be the case. But I don't think I'm ever. Do I mask for people? Absolutely. Because sometimes you got to get through the day. But
right.
I think the person that I am, it would be very hard for me to be somebody that I'm not. And I think the common threads of the person that I am and what I do I stay up late worrying about is, like, I want to be a good person. And I know that sounds very vague, but to me it's not vague. To me it is my 5-year, 10-year, 15, 20-year plan. Is I want to be a good person as best I can be. And I recognize I can't be everything for everyone.
Right.
But I want to be a good person. And the other thing I want to be is I want to be a safe person. And so I spend a lot of time doing my best to be those things. And it's hard.
Yeah.
It's not something I take lightly. I want to be somebody who people can trust. And I have made decisions that have messed up that trust sometimes as a creator in front of hundreds of thousands of people, and that's hard. And I recognize those mistakes, and I grow through those mistakes, and I appreciate the accountability that people have accounted to me. I guess is the best way to say that. And also that people have given me the space to grow.
Right.
And I deeply appreciate that. So assuming, like, I don't ever want to be someone who people thinks is just performing all the time. I'm honestly not great at that. I don't have a lot of practice at that. Like, if I'm on stage with a mic in my hand, yeah, I'm performing for you.
Of course. It's a mic in front of me that's different. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, like, that is. You want me to do that.
Right.
Like,
exactly.
That's what I'm there for.
That's the point. But if we're, like, in a restaurant chilling out together, I want the genuine Weston.
Yeah, it would be very hard for me to perform.
Yeah.
Because really what I want is I want to know who you actually are, and if I'm performing for you, I'll never figure that out.
Right. That makes sense.
Because I feel like in order for me to understand who you are, I have to be authentic at the same time. Yeah. Great question. That was a great question.
That was a great question.
Yeah.
We don't have any more, so in the meantime, and just in case people want to add questions to the queue, tell us what we can expect from you in the future, in the near future, other than going to Gen Con, which I cannot wait for that. But what can we expect to see from you in the future?
From me, lots more music. I love making music. I will be at, most likely I should be at San Diego Comic-Con, Gen Con. If you see me, say hi. I love saying hi to people. It's literally like my favorite thing. It's the whole reason I go to conventions is to meet people and to say hello to people. So say hi. From me, currently working on trying to figure out some algorithm stuff. I'm being totally honest with you.
Oh
Like
my-
I'm trying to. You can expect a lot of experiments
Yeah.
from me. Like I got like a green screen, so I've been doing like green screen type stuff. Expect a lot of experiments coming out from Arcane Anthems, trying to figure out how I can continue to make things that I'm passionate about and then market them right in short form.
Okay.
Social media stuff.
Let's
Like
get it
here we
going.
go. Like yeah. So expect lots of weird things. And we'll see what hits, right? We'll figure it out together. But yeah, I just so appreciate you having me on. It was so much fun.
So much fun. I really glad that you came on.